On the 24th of December 2012, the final episode of Merlin aired. My entire family sat together to watch the finale, even my older sister, who hadn't seen anything from the last season, but who had also formed love for the characters through the years. Around 40 minutes later, the lorry shot past the screen, homeless, depressed old man Merlin walked by, and the credits rolled. I said the words, "That was stupid," and ran off to my room to cry. The final episode straight up traumatized 12-year-old me, and for years I was unable to watch those final 2 episodes because I knew where it was going and I couldn't bear to feel the loss. When I first started working on these analysis videos, I hadn't rewatched the final episodes yet. I wrote a long rant about how horrible the whole thing was and what I would have done differently, but then I rewatched the show. Watching the show, knowing that it's a tragedy, meant that I could appreciate the beauty of the last episode. Though that doesn't mean I won't still be lovingly critiquing the show, as I have been doing for the last 2 videos. Okay, let's jump right into things. First, we're looking at the Diamond of the Day, Part 1. The episode opens with high tension. Morgana knows now that Merlin is Emrys, so we know something big is coming. There's a growing sense of dread that really permeates these final episodes. Morgana uses this creature to steal another sorcerer's magic, and it doesn't take long for the audience to figure out where this is going. Merlin has been in situations where his magic hasn't worked, but no magic at all is something entirely different. Magic is something that is so embedded into his identity. You can't have Merlin without magic. We cut to Merlin and Arthur in the tavern. Having this scene here was a good decision since this is the last time we see either of them truly happy and having fun. Ever. Not to mention that after the long-running joke of how much time Merlin spends in the tavern, it's nice to actually see him there, drunk and having a good time. He goes home and his magic is stolen by this thing. Yes, I am avoiding pronouncing its name. And the scene is nowhere near as dramatic as you would expect. I think it says a lot that he isn't immediately thrown into a meltdown when he loses his magic. Very different from early days, I'd rather be dead without my magic Merlin. As the episode progresses and Morgana's forces begin overtaking the kingdom, Merlin silently takes it all in. His inner strife comes from a feeling of uselessness, of being unable to help anyone rather than a place of selfishness. There's a battle coming. Morgana has a massive army, though where she got it from this time isn't really clear. They just be bad guys. Arthur plans to take the fight to Morgana, cutting off her army at a pass in the mountains. Percival reveals its name, Camlan. This sense of dread only grows. Merlin knows that Arthur has been prophesied to die there. He's powerless in every sense of the word, knowing that Arthur wouldn't listen to him if he told him not to go, and having no way of protecting him without his powers. Side note, Merlin deserves a seat at the table. I will never not be furious about this. Season 4, the first round table, Gwen sat on one side, Merlin the other. Also, where were all of Arthur's allies in the finale? Mithian and Queen Annis would have happily helped Arthur take on Morgana. I have to assume that they were tight on budget and time, which is the main sense you get from these last 2 episodes. The pacing feels extremely rushed and a lot is glossed over, which is incredibly infuriating considering how much time they wasted on Evil Gwen. And confusing when you discover that the writers apparently always intended on 5 seasons, so it's not as though they weren't given the time to wrap up the way they wanted. Anyway, Merlin decides to go to the Crystal Cave, the birthplace of magic, in order to reclaim his powers. It was a nice touch bringing this setting back, rather than inventing a new one. First, however, he needs to tell Arthur that he won't be accompanying him to Camlan. The scene begins with light jokes, Arthur calling Merlin the worst servant in the world, and really, he's not wrong.
You will be dead.
But quickly becomes difficult to watch as Arthur very clearly feels betrayed. This is another instance of Arthur not being able to hide his true feelings. After everything they've been through, Merlin's faced a dragon with him, never once running away in the face of danger, and now, when it feels most important, he's disappearing. What makes it worse is that Arthur can clearly tell that Merlin is lying about the reason. That being said, this comment?
I always thought you were the bravest man I ever met. Guess I was wrong.
Was so unnecessary. The anger I felt when hearing this for the first time is unreal, because the other side of looking at this is that Arthur should think about why Merlin would lie and assume that it's important. They part ways, and this is the first time they've separated in a really long time. Merlin's done quests separately, but Arthur hasn't really. I personally like them being separated before the finale, it just makes the stakes feel much higher. It's also nice to see Gwen accompanying Arthur. It's a quick glimpse of season 1 Gwen. I just wish they didn't speak so formally with each other. If you haven't already, watch my other 2 videos to hear me talk more about this. Merlin asks Gawain to go with him through the Valley of the Fallen Kings, knowing that he can't protect himself. I love that he asks him, since their friendship is really brushed to the side for the last 2 seasons. Up until this point, Merlin has only been thinking of what losing his magic means for the people, but when he and Gawain are attacked by Saxons, we see the true impact of him losing them. Merlin screams for Gawain's help, and it's the first time we see him truly helpless. He's faced terrible creatures and deadly poisons, but it's been a long time since he's had to be afraid of something that feels as trivial as a sword. Once they make it to the cave, they say goodbye, and this is the last time they ever see each other, and you can feel the weight of it in the way they part. Later in the episode, Morgana forges a sword in a dragon's breath to give to Mordred. This action completes the parallels between Morgana and Mordred versus Merlin and Arthur. The former are a darker version of the latter. The show has always loved this idea of 2 sides of the same coin, and it's applicable here. Morgana and Merlin represent magic. Mordred and Arthur are the warrior's strength. Morgana has Arethusa, a crippled and twisted creature that once represented joy and hope, while Merlin has Kilgara, an ancient and wise creature that represents the old world. Now, if this next part sounds random for me to talk about, it also felt random in the show. There's a subplot where, at the beginning of the episode, Gawain falls for a woman who's a spy for Morgana. Honestly, I don't know why this show enjoys its betrayal so much. It will never hit as hard as it did with Morgana, because the audience actually cared about her. Anyway, Gawain told her that they were going to the Valley of the Fallen Kings, so Morgana is there at the Crystal Cave to ambush Merlin. They barely speak a word to each other before she traps him in the cave and leaves. I would have loved more of a conversation like in A Servant of Two Masters, but there simply isn't time apparently. Merlin is left alone, and this whole scene is just... This was the role Colin Morgan was meant to play. He gave everything in the show. However, the drama is later lost a little, considering how Deus Ex Machina his powers returning is. His father appears and essentially tells him to take a nap and he'll be fine. While I wish all problems worked like that, it just feels a little too easy. Perhaps if it wasn't only his dad who appeared, if more characters like Freya and Will and a bunch of others that Merlin had lost appeared and banded together to give him his powers back. After everything he sacrificed, it would have been nice to see them helping. But I also see what the show was trying to do, in that magic is so intrinsically a part of Merlin that it's impossible for him to lose. It just feels a little underwhelming in the way they do it. There's a fairly well-known Tumblr post within the Merlin fandom that comments on the fact that when Merlin's powers are returned to him, his first action isn't a violent escape from the cave. He creates a butterfly. He chooses to create something innocent and beautiful because he never asked for this destiny of violence. Really quickly, I just want to appreciate the sound design of magic in the show. It can be both magical and wondrous,
Lost man.
or threatening and dramatic. It's a gorgeous sound, and they're so consistent with it throughout the show. Merlin then uses the crystals to send Arthur a warning that Morgana's army are on the way. Considering this is how Merlin reacted the first time he was in the cave, it's great once again to get a sense of character growth and strength. Merlin's father then tells Merlin to go into a light where he will discover his true self. To be honest, much like the rest of the show, the great moments are truly great, but this episode is mainly full of contrivances. And that's the end of part 1. Its purpose is to set up the finale, and it is successful in this. I will never forget what it was like finishing this episode and hearing this in the preview for the finale.
I am a sorcerer. I have magic.
The chills that I got, my god. So it's quite interesting when you learn that in one version of the finale script, Arthur didn't actually find out about Merlin's magic, but luckily writer Julian Murphy realised that audiences would feel cheated. Can you imagine the backlash if in that last episode, not only did Arthur die, but then he didn't even find out about Merlin's magic? It's... okay, sure. Just kick us while we're down, you know? Anyway, I digress. It's finally time to talk about the Diamond of the Day, Part 2. The episode begins and we're back into the action. The show uses its beloved slow-mo and we watch a fairly basic battle. A highlight is seeing Gwen active and helping people. Again, after a season of mainly doing nothing, it makes her feel like early season Gwen. It's during the battle, however, that the need for a solid magic system becomes seriously necessary. The show uses a very soft magic system. The audience is never offered explanations for the limits of magic or anything like that. So when one moment a sorcerer can scream their way out of a prison cell, but another simply strolls over to the execution block, it becomes kinda confusing. So in this final battle, it's especially confusing as to why Morgana only uses her magic once, and Mordred not at all. I have to assume it was another thing that suffered due to lack of budget. Merlin turns up and calmly massacres a ton of people before shooting Morgana, who immediately falls. But this is not why we watch Merlin. We watch for moments like this. Arthur's faltering when seeing Mordred in the end was his undoing. The foreshadowing from the first episode of Season 5, Arthur's Bane, is paid off. Mordred is then killed and Arthur collapses on the battlefield. We also watch the show for moments like this.
Where have you been?
Merlin and Arthur are reunited, but Merlin was too late. He then decides to reveal his magic to Arthur. I know a lot of people hate the way Arthur reacts to the magic reveal. I don't think it would have been realistic for him to just be okay with it. When Gwen later figures it out, which I love that she does by the way, it's different because she's had time to work it out and process it. While Arthur has not only gone through the emotional turmoil of battle and a stab wound, but he's told with no real warning. That being said, Merlin's hurt is hard to watch. You can see how Arthur's rejection of the truth weighs on him. He's finally told him the thing he's wanted to tell him for so long, and Arthur reacts exactly how Merlin feared he would. Gaius turns up and has a conversation with Arthur where he explains that Merlin is
the greatest sorcerer ever to walk the earth. Merlin, if you
I think that not only was it necessary as it gave Arthur another perspective and a voice of reason, but I think Merlin really needed a hug and just some general support. Gaius convinces Arthur to let Merlin take him to the gates of Avalon to be healed. Before he goes, he gives Gaius his seal to give to Gwen so that if he dies, she will succeed him. In the video commentary, writer Julian Murphy comments, that's the last vestige of his that's the last vestige of his marriage. I do think this was vital as the rest of the episode doesn't have time to focus on any other relationship except the boys. This is their final adventure. Arthur continues to feel Merlin's betrayal. There's an odd sense of tension between them. They're almost like strangers. They have to try and recontextualize their entire relationship with this new element. Though Merlin points out that he's still the same person and it shouldn't make a difference, it's very difficult not to give a queer reading of this whole situation. A sign that their relationship has the potential to rebuild, however, is when they're able to joke again, since a big part of their love language is mocking one another. The first time they do this, it's clear that they're not quite there yet, but it's a good sign. When first discovering the truth, Arthur initially only thinks about how he's feeling, saying things like, "I thought I knew you," only thinking about how he feels betrayed. Then he begins to consider Merlin, "You lied to me all this time," before finally starting to ask why Merlin kept it from him for so long.
Why did you never tell me? I wanted to, but... What? You'd have chopped my head off. Not sure what I'd have done. And I didn't want to put you in that position. That's what worried you.
And the entire conversation is so intimate. Even if you don't ship them, they very clearly share a bond deeper than friendship. They care for each other so tenderly, it feels similar to the Lord of the Rings men love. However, it's clear why the BBC never followed through with it. If Merlin and Arthur had kissed, there probably would have been a lot of backlash considering not only the time that the show aired in, but the fact that the BBC is publicly funded. Still, I kind of wish they'd done it anyway. Oh, and remember this traitor lady? I would not blame you if you didn't. She sends a letter to Morgana saying where Merlin and Arthur are going, but by this point Gawain and the others have figured out she's a traitor, so they trick her into giving Morgana the wrong information. Gawain and Percival are idiots, however, and go after Morgana. Their meddling means that Morgana captures them and tortures the real information out of Gawain, discovering their true location. This highlights a major problem in the show. It's never Morgana outsmarting the good guys, it's the good guys making stupid decisions. Gawain and Morgana have a relationship that I haven't really seen anyone talk about. They have a lot of moments together peppered throughout the show. In the end, I think Morgana killing Gawain makes sense. It's something that the show has quietly been building up to. Morgana kills Gawain, and the trio of magic, courage, and strength loses strength. Gawain dies knowing that he led to the death of Arthur. Morgana finds Merlin and Arthur, and then Merlin stabs her. That's it. The big bad villain is dead. Okay, moving on. I don't think a massive battle was necessary. As I said many times in my last video, those best moments are the ones based on character. Merlin poisoning Morgana at the end of season 2 was quietly intense with high emotional stakes. There was no reason that this scene couldn't have been that as well. Instead, it just felt like a loose end they wanted to quickly tie up. Merlin tries to carry Arthur to the lake, but isn't able to, despite doing this in the last episode. We're just gonna ignore that happened? Okay, cool. Their final moments together are intimate and emotional, and their chemistry at its finest.
I'm not going to lose you. Just hold me. Please.
The audio commentary says it best. Arthur's asking the man he loves to hold him. Arthur thanks Merlin and dies.
Thank you. Arthur. No.
That's when Merlin calls for the dragon. The episode has all the potential to feel like a Greek tragedy, but then the little inconsistencies make it very difficult to focus. In episode 10, The Kindness of Strangers, Kilgara revealed that he was dying, which I think was supposed to be enough explanation as to why Merlin doesn't call for him sooner, but it still feels very, why didn't the Eagles take them there? Fixing this would have been very easy. In The Diamond of the Day Part 1, when Merlin lost his powers, he should have tried calling for Kilgara, but Kilgara doesn't answer. In this episode, he tries again. He still doesn't answer. Finally, Arthur dies and Merlin screams for Kilgara, and he is unable to ignore the call, though he himself is dying. He pushes himself to help. It would have been that easy. Anyway. When watching Merlin continue to drag Arthur's body with him after his death, it was difficult not to think of Achilles holding on to Patroclus. Just more queer reading, if people are interested. The final episode is simple. Merlin and Arthur's final journey together. In an interview, Julian Murphy said, "Obviously the ending is tragic. Basically, Arthur dies and he fails. I don't know how the nation's going to feel on Christmas Eve. It's pretty gut-wrenching." And it really is. It feels like a tragic love story with Merlin stuck forever waiting for Arthur's return. Now that I have all of my wise analytical commentary out of the way, I'm going to rant about what I would have done if I was in charge, with ideas that probably would have gotten me kicked out of the writer's room. Because while now I can see the beauty in the final episode, my inner child just point blank refuses and demands for a retcon of the entire thing. Character deaths are nothing new, and there are plenty of instances where killing the main character is a good idea, but that's not the problem. We were never given the ending we were promised. From the first episode, the viewer was told that Merlin and Arthur would bring magic back to the kingdom together. This is the one prophecy that doesn't come to pass. I'm not saying everyone had to live. If you absolutely had to kill one of them, then kill Merlin. Keep in mind Merlin is my absolute favourite character, but if either of them had to die, then it should have been him. It would have been far more symbolic if Merlin had given his life to save Arthur's. First of all, Merlin has lost so many people throughout the show that if anything, it would have been more of a gut punch to see Arthur reacting to losing him. And more importantly, it makes more sense thematically. Merlin's entire existence was to protect Arthur in order to bring about the forming of Albion. His death would have marked the end of Arthur's protection and the completion of his purpose and destiny. It would have been the thing that triggered Arthur to let magic return. I know the writers had a really difficult challenge ending the show. If they had done things my way, I'm sure just as many people would have been upset by the ending. It's just the show began so hopeful and optimistic, but the ending was so bleak and depressing. To be honest though, it was the final scene that broke me in the end. Seeing Merlin in modern times, alone and waiting, the ambivalence and joy of the show erased in a single scene. Any ambiguity they were trying to create shattered because the idea of Arthur returning in modern times, for me at least, takes the spell the show had over the viewers and breaks it. You would think that after around 10 years, Jesus Christ, it's been 10 years, that I'd be over it. Unfortunately, no, I don't think I will ever truly be over it, and that right there is proof that this show was really special. I hope you've enjoyed my video series. It was almost therapeutic looking back at the show like this. If there's anything I missed out or a point you want expanding on, leave a comment and we can discuss it. Remember to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.